So I'm going to first work on this pumpkin right here, and I want you to select the entire pumpkin, go up to deformer, go down here to non-linear, and then to bend. Now if we go into our shading and we go into our X-ray mode, we're going to see that this bend deformer got dropped in. Okay. So if we come over to the side here, we can play with this, and this is going to shrink or raise our bend deformer. And then we can play with the curvature of it. Right? So if I enter in 20, it's going to start to really curve. But what you can see is happening here is, just like our cloth, it needs edges to bend. So it really can bend in our pumpkin, but it can't bend in our stem. So go ahead and press Z until your deformer is gone, and we are going to drop in some edge loops along each of our stems. Okay. So we can't just come in here and add in more faces. There's no more input to do that. We have edited this too much. But what we can do is drop some edge loops. So go ahead and hold down right click and go into the edge mode. If you're still in soft select, go ahead and hit B again, and then hold down your shift, hold down your right click, and edge loop mode, you want to come over to this little box. Okay, so this is going to pull up the settings tool for edge loops, and you want to come down to multiple edge loops. Okay. What this is going to do is this is going to drop in multiple edge loops along whichever one you are choosing. So if I came down here and dropped in edge loops, it's going to drop these along, and I can't move them like typical. These are going to be set equidistance from each other. Let's go ahead and press D on that. Okay. So we want to create many of these along there, and I could go 2, 2, 2, but let's go ahead and pump up this number to maybe something like 10. Let's see how that looks. So I think 10 creates enough range of movement for me along that one. Let's go ahead and do that to these other pumpkins. Definitely 10 is getting a lot in there. And I think they all look okay at 10. So this one might get a little more bend just because of how many were in there compared to its relative distance of height. Right. So now that we got this all set up, make sure that you click back on the relative distance, or every time you go to drop in your normal edge loop, it's going to keep this setting. And then we can go ahead and close our tools by shifting it over there. Okay. So now in object mode, we have our pumpkin selected again, and then come up to your deformer, nonlinear, and bend shape. If it creates it. Let's just try that again. Okay, so if stuff is never working, I didn't even realize I'm still in my insert edge loop tool, so stuff like that won't work. So go ahead and hit quit, or Q to quit, and you've noticed that your selection has jumped up. So now with it selected, I can come up here and go to nonlinear and bend, and my deformer has been dropped. Let's go ahead and shorten that a little bit, maybe lengthen it. So now it is going along that way. Maybe do this 2 instead. There we go. And now when I hit curvature and I pump this up to 20, it's bending a lot more of my stem than it was the actual pumpkin itself. Now if you like this look, as you can see on this pumpkin, it is bending into the actual pumpkin itself. But if you don't quite want that, you can actually move this deformer up So it's just the stem. Oops. Okay. You just have the top curve, you could have the bottom curve. You could shorten this to 1 so it's more curving along that way, however you feel. And I like that. I think that looks perfectly fine. Go ahead and hit 3 to smooth. And it's looking pretty good. Okay, so hit Control D to duplicate your pumpkin. Once as you get your stem how you like it, go up ahead and hit the deformer and hit delete. Notice that the pumpkin that the deformer was on has now come back to not bending state, and you're going to go ahead and press it and hit delete. And then go ahead while you're at it, select that pumpkin, come to edit, delete by type, history, and we will move on to our next one. So we got our pumpkin. In object mode selected, come up here to deform, nonlineared, and bend. It has been set in, so let's do our low bound of 0, high bound at 2 maybe. That is very high, that was 20, not 2. So I'm maybe just going to keep this at 1, given how high this height is, and start pumping up this curvature. So that's really giving me a more deformed pumpkin shape. I am going to bring on up the deformer, maybe throw in 90 for a curve. Okay, getting kind of the curve going on there. And of course this is however you like. I'm just going to do this, and then you can spin your pumpkins around, whatever you're feeling. So again, once you get it as you like, Control D to duplicate, come up here, click on your deformer, press delete, delete the one that was previously there, click on your pumpkin, file, oops, edit, delete by type, history. Alright. And we can do our last pumpkin shape. So in object mode, have your pumpkin selected, deformer, nonlinear, bend, and change the low bound to 0, high bound I'm going to do 1.5, just so it's above there a little bit, and start putting in your curvature. Again, way too high. So bringing it a little bit like that. And I could also put this as a negative 80, and have it go the opposite way, whichever one you'd like. But again, you can just twirl your pumpkin around. So it's totally up to you. Go ahead again and select your pumpkin. Control D to duplicate. Click on your deformer. Delete. Delete that pumpkin that was left over. Go ahead, select your pumpkin, edit, delete by type, and history. Okay, so now we got a bunch of little pumpkins here. And I am going to go back to shading and click out of X-ray mode. Okay, so now this pumpkin that I don't exactly have, or that I have here, doesn't exactly have this long swirly stem, but I kind of like that feel. See how this kind of goes like this, and then we can come out and give it more of like the cartoon pumpkin patch stem, kind of like that coming out there, or a bit on a vine, whatever have you. This is covering, a curve, extrude along a curve. So let's take our pumpkins, if you have multiple, and spread them apart a little bit, just so we can get a nice stem going along. Okay. What I want you to do is up here where your polygon primitives are, come into your curves and surfaces and come down here and select this tool. So if you haven't worked with this tool, we did it for revolve in class, but if you are just joining us, you can click in space, and just like the pen tool in Illustrator, it's going to draw along. If it goes up, you can just press delete. But we want to connect it to our pumpkin and come out. I am actually going to make sure all my pumpkins are in the hard select in one mode, and then come back to my curve tool. Okay, so we want to make sure that this curve is coming out of our stem and making our process, our stem come extrude along that curve. So what we need to do is we need to snap to the vertices. You can hold V and see if you can get it onto that vertice, or if you can come up here to these little magnets. This one was along a grid, this one's along a curve, this one is along a point or vertice. So we can select that, come in, drop it right on there. Go ahead and unselect that, or else you're going to draw along your pumpkin. Come down into your front-facing view. If your pumpkins are coming out the side, on your X view, you can go from this way. And what we want to do is sort of pretend like you can see the vine come out and draw along that same angle. And draw a nice little vine curve there. Okay. So, and then once you are done with your curve, you're going to hold down the right key and hit complete tool. Alright, so let's do that again. Go into my curve tool, select the vert snap, snap in the middle, unselect the vert snap, come down here into my front view because that's where I am curving along, and move along this. So you could also say you wanted this one to swirl maybe around out here instead of on all of this axis, because you can notice in this one how it's just on that axis, so we can change it up and go this way. But you also notice that it's on the same, whichever plane you're drawing on is what it's going to stay at that angle for. So what we can do is we can come out a little bit, maybe draw down, and then after you have kind of a shape, you can hover over your curve with your right click and go to Control Vertex, and just like you do any of your other objects, you can move this around. Right? I'm just going to make this how we made the other curve, just for time's sake. You can go ahead and stop the video if you want your curve to be like that. Okay. Complete tool. And my last pumpkin. Select the curve tool. Make sure we're on vert snap. Snap to the vertex, unselect it,